The blood on her dress told everyone in Black Hawk, Colorado, everything they needed to know about where Beatrice Miller had come from, and the whispers that followed her down the dusty Main Street in the summer of 1878 sealed her fate before she could speak a single word in her own defense. She had arrived on the morning stage, stepping down onto the wooden platform with nothing but a small carpetbag, and the kind of hollow look in her eyes that spoke of violence witnessed and barely survived. The dress, once a respectable navy blue, was stained dark across the bodice and sleeves. Her auburn hair hung loose and tangled around her shoulders, and a purple bruise colored her left cheekbone. She was 22 years old, though she looked older in that moment, aged by whatever hell she had fled. The stagecoach driver had tried to tell folks she had been the only survivor of a robbery up in the mountains, that she had watched her family gunned down by bandits, and had walked 3 miles through rough country to reach the road. But Black Hawk was a mining town, suspicious and closed off to strangers, and the good Christian families who ran the shops and homes had already made their judgments. Beatrice tried the general store first. The owner, a thick-necked man named Horace Brennan, had looked her up and down with undisguised contempt. "We do not take in strays here," he said flatly. "Especially not ones covered in blood who cannot explain themselves properly. Try somewhere else." She had tried to explain, her voice shaking with exhaustion and grief, but he had already turned his back and his wife shooed her out with a broom like she was a mangy dog. The boarding house was next. Mrs. Gertrude Walsh, a pinched-faced woman who claimed to run a respectable establishment, took one look at Beatrice standing on her porch and shook her head firmly. "I know your type," she said coldly. "Coming here with some sob story, looking for charity or worse. We have decent folk here, and I will not have you bringing shame to my house. Be on your way." By midday, Beatrice had been turned away from 7 different establishments. The doctor would not see her without payment up front, which she did not have. The church reverend listened to her story with an expression that clearly showed he did not believe a word, then suggested she move along to Denver, where they were more equipped to handle unfortunate souls. The dressmaker slammed the door in her face. The hotel manager threatened to call the sheriff if she did not leave his property immediately. She stood in the middle of the street as the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, feeling the weight of every stare, every whispered comment, every slammed door like physical blows. The tears that had threatened all day finally spilled over, tracking clean lines through the dust on her face. She had nowhere to go, no money, no family left alive. Nothing but the memories of her father and mother and younger brother lying dead in their overturned wagon, while the bandits rode away laughing. That was when Travis Thompson saw her. He had been coming out of the assayer's office, his saddlebags heavy with the payment for the gold dust he had brought down from his claim up in the hills. Travis was 26, tall and lean from hard work, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and gray eyes that missed very little. He had built his small ranch on the outskirts of town over the past 3 years, working his claim and raising a few head of cattle on the side. He kept mostly to himself, content with the company of his horse and his dog and the occasional trip to town for supplies and companionship at the saloon. He knew everyone in Black Hawk, and he knew exactly what he was watching as the young woman stood there crying in the street while townspeople crossed to the other side to avoid her. He had seen this before, the way fear and prejudice could turn ordinary people cruel. He stood there for a long moment, watching as she wiped at her face with a trembling hand, clearly trying to gather herself together enough to decide what to do next. Travis was not the kind of man who acted without thinking, but something about the defeated slope of her shoulders and the way she held herself together through what was clearly devastating rejection made his decision for him. He crossed the street in long strides, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust, and stopped directly in front of her. Beatrice looked up, startled, her green eyes wide and wet with tears. She took an instinctive step back, clearly bracing for another rejection or worse, but Travis held up one hand in a peaceful gesture. "I heard what happened to you," he said quietly, his voice pitched low so the curious onlookers could not hear. "The stage driver told the story at the saloon last night, about the robbery, about your family." She stared at him, clearly unsure whether to hope or expect another blow. "Then you know I have nothing," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I cannot pay for lodging or food or anything at all. I just needed somewhere to rest until I could figure out what to do next, but no one will even let me explain." Travis looked at her for a long moment, taking in the exhaustion and grief and fear written across her face, the bloodstains that marked her dress, the way she swayed slightly on her feet from sheer fatigue. He thought about his small ranch house, empty except for himself. He thought about the way these townspeople had treated a young woman who had just lost everything. He thought about what his mother would have done had she still been alive. "Then you'll be part of mine," he said firmly. Beatrice blinked at him, clearly not understanding. "What, my family?" "Such as it is. Just me and a dog named Bear and a few cattle and chickens. But I have a house with a spare room and food enough for two, and I could use help around the place if you are willing to work for your keep." He met her eyes steadily. "No strings attached. Just a place to stay until you get back on your feet." She stared at him as if he had spoken in a foreign language. "You do not even know me. Why would you do this?" Travis shrugged slightly. "Because it is the right thing to do, and because every single person in this town should be ashamed of themselves for turning away someone in need." He glanced around at the watching crowd and raised his voice deliberately. "My name is Travis Thompson. I have a ranch about 3 miles west of here. You would be staying in a separate room, working as a housekeeper and cook in exchange for room and board. Everything proper and respectable for anyone who is wondering." He looked back down at her, and his voice softened again. "But mostly because you look like you are about to fall over, and I cannot in good conscience leave you standing here in the street with nowhere to go." Beatrice felt something crack open in her chest, some tight band of fear and despair that had been squeezing her heart since the moment the bandits had appeared on the road. This stranger was offering her exactly what she needed most in the world, without judgment, without conditions, simply because it was kind. She opened her mouth to thank him, but what came out was a sob, and then she was crying in earnest, tears streaming down her face while she tried desperately to get control of herself. Travis waited patiently, ignoring the stares and whispers around them. When she finally managed to stop crying and wipe her face again, he offered her his arm. "Come on, let's get you somewhere you can rest." She took his arm hesitantly, her hand trembling slightly as she placed it in the crook of his elbow, and let him guide her down the street toward where his horse was tied. She could feel every eye in town watching them, could hear the renewed whispers, but Travis walked with his head high, and his expression daring anyone to say something to his face. No one did. His horse was a sturdy bay gelding with intelligent eyes and a calm temperament. Travis helped Beatrice up into the saddle, then swung up behind her. She sat stiffly at first, uncomfortable with the closeness, but as they rode out of town and the ranch house came into view, exhaustion overtook propriety, and she found herself leaning back against his solid chest, her eyes drifting closed. The ranch was small but well kept, with a tidy house, a barn, a chicken coop, and a corral where several cattle grazed peacefully. Everything spoke of a man who took pride in his work and kept his word. Travis helped her down from the horse, catching her when her legs nearly buckled from fatigue, and led her into the house. The interior was sparse but clean, with simple furniture and none of the decorative touches a woman might have added. There was a main room with a fireplace and kitchen area, and two doors leading off to what were presumably bedrooms. A large yellow dog rose from his place by the hearth and padded over, tail wagging slowly as he sniffed at Beatrice with friendly curiosity. "This is Bear," Travis said, rubbing the dog's ears. "He's friendly, but he looks intimidating, which is useful out here. The spare room is through there. It is not much, just a bed and a dresser and a washstand, but it is clean and private. Why do not you rest for a while? I will heat some water so you can wash up, and then I'll make us some supper." Beatrice looked at him with eyes that still held disbelief that this was really happening. "Thank you," she whispered. "I do not know how I will ever repay you for this kindness." Travis shook his head. "No repayment needed. Just rest now. We can talk more later." She went into the small bedroom and closed the door, and Travis heard the sound of her sinking onto the bed with a shaky sigh. He stood there for a moment, wondering what exactly he had just gotten himself into, then shrugged and went to build up the fire and set water to heating. When Beatrice emerged an hour later, she had washed her face and hands and tried to comb her hair into some semblance of order. The blood-stained dress was the only one she had, and she wore it with clear discomfort, her arms wrapped around herself as if she could hide the stains. Travis had made a simple meal of beans and cornbread and bacon, and they sat at the small table and ate mostly in silence. Finally, Travis cleared his throat. "You do not have to tell me anything you do not want to, but if you want to talk about what happened, I will listen." Beatrice set down her fork and stared at her plate for a long moment. Then, haltingly at first and then in a rush, the whole story came out. Her family had been traveling from Kansas to California, hoping to start fresh in a place with better opportunities. They had joined a small wagon train, but her father had quarreled with the wagon master over the route, and they had split off on their own, thinking they could make better time through the mountains. The bandits had caught them on a narrow mountain pass where there was nowhere to run. Her father had tried to fight them off. They had killed him first, then her mother when she screamed, then her 15-year-old brother when he tried to protect Beatrice. They had ransacked the wagon, taken everything of value and ridden away, leaving her alive either through mercy or oversight. She had hidden in the rocks until dark, terrified they would come back, then walked through the night until she reached the road where the stagecoach found her the next morning. The driver had brought her to Black Hawk because it was the nearest town, but he had not stayed to vouch for her story. He had a schedule to keep. By the time she finished talking, tears were streaming down her face again, but her voice was steady. Travis listened to every word without interrupting, his expression grave. When she fell silent, he reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "I am so sorry," he said quietly. "No one should have to go through what you went through, and those people in town should have helped you instead of judging you. You did nothing wrong." Beatrice looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt or pity or the contempt she had seen in so many eyes today. She found only compassion and quiet anger on her behalf. "Why do you believe me when no one else did?" Travis shrugged slightly. "Because I know what it looks like when someone is telling the truth, and because I know how this town can be. They are so worried about respectability and reputation that they forget basic human decency sometimes." He squeezed her hand gently. "You are safe here. I give you my word. Stay as long as you need to." Over the following days, Beatrice slowly began to settle into the rhythm of life at the ranch. Travis had meant what he said about her working for her keep, but he was patient and kind as he showed her where everything was kept and what needed to be done. She threw herself into the work with almost desperate intensity, cooking and cleaning and tending the chickens and garden, as if she could somehow repay his kindness through sheer effort. Travis watched her work herself nearly to exhaustion that first week, and finally put his foot down one evening when he found her scrubbing the already clean floor on her hands and knees well after dark. "Beatrice, stop. You do not have to prove anything." She sat back on her heels, pushing a strand of hair out of her face. "I just want to be useful. I do not want you to regret taking me in." "I do not regret it," he said firmly, "but you are going to work yourself sick if you keep this up. You went through something terrible. It is all right to take time to heal." She looked up at him with those haunted green eyes. "If I stop working, I will think about it. I will see their faces. I cannot do that yet." Travis understood. He had his own ghosts, his own losses that he kept at bay through constant motion and purpose. So he nodded and let her work, but he made sure she ate properly and rested enough and did not push herself past her limits. Slowly, carefully, they began to know each other. In the evenings after the work was done, they would sit on the porch and watch the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. Travis would talk about his plans for the ranch, his hopes of expanding the herd and maybe building onto the house someday. Beatrice would talk about her childhood in Kansas, the good memories from before tragedy struck. They did not talk about the future, not yet. But something was growing between them, tentative and fragile as a seedling pushing through hard ground. The first time they went into town together, about 2 weeks after Beatrice had arrived at the ranch, the stares and whispers started immediately. Travis kept his hand protectively at the small of her back as they walked into the general store, his expression daring anyone to say something. Beatrice had a new dress now, one that Travis had paid for from a seamstress who lived outside town and did not ask questions. It was a simple gray cotton, but it was clean and modest and fit her properly. Horace Brennan, the store owner who had turned her away, looked distinctly uncomfortable as Travis placed their order. His wife actually had the grace to look ashamed when Beatrice met her eyes. They completed their business quickly and left, but not before Travis made a point of introducing Beatrice as his housekeeper to several people. His voice calm but with an edge that suggested he would not tolerate any disrespect. On the ride back, Beatrice was quiet. Finally she said, "People think I am your mistress, do not they?" Travis's jaw tightened. "Some people will think what they want regardless of the truth, but anyone who knows me knows I would not disrespect a woman under my protection that way. It does not bother you, what they say." He glanced at her, his gray eyes serious. "What bothers me is that you had to suffer their judgment in the first place. What they think of me is immaterial. I know the truth, and so do you. That is what matters." Beatrice felt something shift in her chest, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the summer sun. She had known Travis Thompson for only 2 weeks, but already she trusted him more than she had trusted anyone in her life. He was steady and honest and kind without being soft. He worked hard and kept his word, and treated her with a respect that made her feel human again after days of being made to feel like something shameful and broken. She was beginning to realize she was also falling in love with him, though she told herself it was too soon, too complicated, too much given everything she had been through. But love was not something that asked permission or waited for convenient timing. The summer days grew longer and hotter. Travis taught Beatrice to ride his spare horse, an older mare named Daisy who was patient with beginners. They would ride out in the early mornings before the heat became oppressive, checking on the cattle and exploring the surrounding hills. Beatrice proved to be a natural rider, sitting the horse with increasing confidence as the days passed. One morning, they rode up to a high meadow where wildflowers bloomed in riotous profusion, and a cold stream tumbled down from the mountains. They let the horses graze while they sat on the bank and dangled their feet in the icy water. The sun was warm on their faces and the air smelled of pine and flowers and summer. "I love it here," Beatrice said softly. "It is so beautiful, so peaceful." Travis looked at her profile, taking in the way the sun turned her auburn hair to flame and brought out the freckles across her nose. She had gained a little weight in the past weeks, lost the hollow look around her eyes, smiled more readily. She was beautiful, though he suspected she did not realize it. "I am glad you are here," he said, the words coming out more intense than he had intended. She turned to look at him, and something in his expression made her breath catch. They stared at each other for a long moment, the air between them suddenly charged with tension and possibility. Travis reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek. "Beatrice," he said quietly. "I need to tell you something." She waited, her heart pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. "I did not expect this when I brought you home. I just wanted to help someone in need. But over these past weeks, I have come to care for you deeply. I look forward to seeing you every morning. I miss you when you are out of the room. I think about you constantly." He paused, searching her face. "I am falling in love with you, and I needed you to know that. But I do not want you to feel obligated or pressured. You have been through so much, and you need time to heal. I will wait as long as you need. I just could not keep pretending I do not feel this way." Beatrice felt tears prickling her eyes, but they were not tears of grief this time. "Travis, I feel the same way. I have for days now, maybe longer. I tried to tell myself it was too soon, that I should not feel this way after everything that has happened, but I cannot help it. You saved me, not just from having nowhere to go, but from giving up entirely. You made me want to keep living when all I wanted to do was disappear." Travis cupped her face in both hands, his thumbs gently wiping away the tears that had spilled over. "You are the strongest person I have ever met. You survived something that would have broken most people. I am in awe of you," she laughed shakily. "I do not feel very strong. Trust me, you are." He leaned in slowly, his eyes asking permission, and when she did not pull away, he kissed her gently, carefully, as if she were something precious and fragile. Beatrice kissed him back, her hands coming up to grip his shirt, and felt something inside her that had been frozen since that terrible day in the mountains finally begin to thaw. This was not the passionate, desperate kiss of fiction, but something sweeter and more real, a promise of healing and hope and new beginnings. When they finally pulled apart, they were both smiling. Travis rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right, court you properly. Marry you if you will have me when you are ready. Build a life together." "Yes," Beatrice whispered. "Yes to all of that." They stayed in the meadow for hours, talking and planning and stealing kisses like a pair of teenagers, until the afternoon sun warned them it was time to head back. They rode home with their hands linked between the horses, grinning at each other like fools, and Bear greeted them with enthusiastic tail wagging as if he knew something momentous had happened. That evening, Travis suggested they tell people in town that they were courting. "I know it has only been a few weeks, but I do not care what people think about the timing. I want everyone to know my intentions are honorable, that I love you and plan to marry you." Beatrice felt a flutter of nerves. "The town already disapproves of me. This will just give them more to talk about. Let them talk." Travis took her hands in his. "I love you, Beatrice Miller. I want the whole world to know it. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly." So the next Sunday, they rode into Black Hawk together for church services, sitting side by side in the back pew while the congregation whispered and stared. After the service, Travis stood up and very publicly asked permission to walk Beatrice home, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. She blushed scarlet but agreed, and they walked out together with their heads high. The town's reaction was mixed. Some people, particularly the younger folks and a few of the other ranchers who knew Travis, congratulated him and welcomed Beatrice warmly. Others remained cold and disapproving, though none dared say anything directly to Travis's face. The Reverend's wife, a kind woman named Martha Hayes, made a point of inviting them both to a church social, her open acceptance helping to soften some of the remaining hostility. Over the following weeks, Travis courted Beatrice with old-fashioned propriety and genuine romance. He brought her wildflowers from the meadow. He taught her to shoot so she would be able to protect herself if ever needed. They went on picnics and long rides. He read to her in the evenings from the few books he owned. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's thoughts and dreams and fears. Beatrice bloomed under his attention and affection. The haunted look gradually faded from her eyes, replaced by hope and joy. She laughed more, smiled readily, teased him gently about his inability to cook anything more complicated than beans and bacon. She began to make small improvements around the house. Adding curtains, she sewed herself and planting flowers by the porch, and generally making the place feel like a home instead of just a shelter. Travis watched her transform and fell more in love every day. He loved her strength and resilience, her kindness and quick wit, the way she hummed while she worked and the sound of her laughter. He loved how she was not afraid of hard work, how she treated the animals with gentle affection, how she made his lonely house feel warm and alive. By late August, 3 months after Beatrice had arrived in Black Hawk, Travis decided he could not wait any longer. He rode into town and bought a simple gold band from the jeweler, then spent an evening planning exactly what he wanted to say. He proposed on a Sunday evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Bear was sprawled at their feet, and the mountains were painted in shades of purple and gold, and Travis suddenly could not imagine waiting another day to make her his wife. "Beatrice," he said, taking her hand. "I know we have not been courting very long by conventional standards, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you. I want to spend every day for the rest of my life loving you. Will you marry me?" He pulled out the ring and Beatrice gasped, her free hand flying to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling radiantly. "Yes. Oh yes, Travis, I love you so much. Yes, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her deeply, and she kissed him back with all the love and passion and joy she felt. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless and grinning, Travis stood and pulled her to her feet and spun her around, making her laugh and cling to his shoulders. They decided to marry quickly, not wanting to wait through a long engagement. The wedding was planned for mid-September, giving them time to make the necessary arrangements, but not so long that they had to endure months of waiting. Beatrice wrote letters to distant relatives back in Kansas, informing them of what had happened to her family and of her upcoming marriage. She received a few responses expressing sympathy for her losses and cautious good wishes for her future. It was not much, but it helped to have some connection to her past acknowledged and honored. Travis took her into Denver for a proper shopping trip, insisting she have a wedding dress that made her feel beautiful. They found a lovely cream-colored gown with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs, and Beatrice cried when she saw herself in the mirror because, for the first time since the attack, she felt like herself again. Like a woman with a future, instead of a victim with only a painful past. The wedding took place on a perfect September afternoon, when the aspens were just beginning to turn gold on the mountainsides, and the air had the first crisp edge of approaching autumn. The ceremony was held in the small church in Black Hawk, and Travis had invited everyone he knew, making it clear that anyone who could not be respectful to his bride was not welcome. To Beatrice's surprise, the church was nearly full. Many people who had rejected her when she first arrived now came to witness her marriage, some out of genuine goodwill and others out of curiosity. But Travis had made it clear that only kind words would be tolerated. Martha Hayes had helped Beatrice get ready, fussing over her hair and dress with maternal affection. Several other women who had warmed to Beatrice over the summer brought flowers and food for the reception. Travis stood at the altar in his best suit, his dark hair neatly combed and his gray eyes bright with emotion as he watched Beatrice walk down the aisle. She had no father to give her away, so she walked alone, her head high and her eyes locked on the man she loved. She had survived the worst thing imaginable and found love on the other side. She was not going to hide or apologize for her happiness. The Reverend performed the ceremony with dignity and warmth, speaking about how God brought people together in unexpected ways and how love could heal even the deepest wounds. Travis's voice was steady and sure as he spoke his vows, promising to love and honor and cherish Beatrice for all his days. Beatrice's voice shook with emotion, but never wavered, as she made the same promises in return. When the Reverend finally pronounced them husband and wife, and told Travis he could kiss his bride, Travis cupped Beatrice's face tenderly and kissed her with such obvious love and devotion that several women in the congregation got teary-eyed. Beatrice kissed him back, her heart so full she thought it might burst, and the church erupted in applause and cheers. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food and drink in abundance. People danced and ate and toasted the happy couple. Even some of those who had been coldest to Beatrice came and offered stiff but genuine congratulations. Horace Brennan and his wife brought a wedding gift, and the wife actually apologized quietly for how she had treated Beatrice when she first arrived. Beatrice accepted the apology with grace, though Travis noticed his wife's hand tightened on his arm and he squeezed back reassuringly. As the sun set and the guests began to depart, Travis and Beatrice stood together and waved goodbye, relieved to finally be alone. They walked into their house as husband and wife, and Travis swept Beatrice up into his arms and carried her over the threshold, making her laugh and protest and cling to his neck. That night they came together with tenderness and passion, two people who had found each other against all odds and chosen to build a life together. They took their time, learning each other, giving and receiving pleasure with growing confidence and intimacy. Afterward they lay tangled together, Beatrice's head on Travis's chest and his arms wrapped securely around her. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "Thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked away. Thank you for giving me a family when I had lost everything." Travis kissed the top of her head. "You are my family now, my wife, my partner, my love. Everything I have is yours, and I promise I will spend every day trying to make you happy." "You already do," she said softly, "just by being you." They fell asleep holding each other, the future stretching before them full of promise and possibility. The first year of their marriage was one of hard work and deep contentment. Travis expanded his herd with Beatrice's enthusiastic support, and she proved to have a good head for the business side of ranching, keeping meticulous records and suggesting improvements that increased their profits. They worked side by side from dawn to dusk, building their dream together one day at a time. Beatrice made friends in town, slowly winning over even some of the most skeptical residents through her unfailing kindness and strong work ethic. She helped Martha Hayes with church charity work, distributing food and clothing to families in need. She never forgot what it felt like to be desperate and rejected, and she made sure no one who came to her seeking help was ever turned away. Travis watched his wife bloom into a confident, happy woman and fell more in love with her every day. He loved coming home to find her singing in the kitchen. He loved the way she always had a kiss for him when he walked through the door. He loved how she challenged him and supported him and made him laugh. He loved how she fit so perfectly in his arms at night, how she murmured his name in her sleep. In the spring of their second year of marriage, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant. She told Travis one evening after supper, too excited to wait for a perfect moment. His face went through a series of expressions: shock, disbelief, wonder, and finally pure joy. And then he was sweeping her into his arms and spinning her around carefully, shouting with happiness. "We are going to have a baby," he kept repeating as if he could not quite believe it. "We are going to be parents." Beatrice laughed, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, are you happy?" "Happy? I am the luckiest man alive." He set her down gently and immediately became protective, making her sit down, bringing her water, asking if she felt all right, if she needed anything. She laughed at his fussing but secretly loved it. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Travis became even more protective, insisting Beatrice not overwork herself and taking on extra chores to lighten her load. Beatrice tolerated his hovering with amused patience, knowing it came from love. Martha Hayes and the other women in town threw her a small party to celebrate, gifting her with handmade baby clothes and blankets, and offering advice both helpful and overwhelming. In November of 1880, on a cold night when snow was falling softly outside, Beatrice went into labor. Travis rode through the storm to fetch the midwife, Mrs. Eleanor Sullivan, a capable woman who had delivered half the babies in Black Hawk. The labor was long and difficult, and Travis paced the front room wearing a path in the floor while he listened to his wife's cries of pain and wished desperately he could do something, anything, to help her. Finally, just before dawn, a baby's cry pierced the air. Travis froze, his heart in his throat, until Mrs. Sullivan opened the bedroom door with a smile. "You have a son, Mr. Thompson, a big, healthy boy, and your wife is tired but doing fine." Travis rushed into the room. Beatrice lay propped against the pillows, exhausted but glowing with joy, holding a red-faced, squalling infant wrapped in a blanket. She looked up at Travis with such love and pride that he felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Travis approached carefully, as if the baby might break, and sat on the edge of the bed. Beatrice placed the infant in his arms, and he looked down at the tiny, perfect face and felt his heart expand in ways he had not known were possible. "He is beautiful," he whispered, "just like his mother." They named him Thomas Miller Thompson, honoring Travis's father and Beatrice's maiden name. Little Thomas had his mother's green eyes and his father's dark hair, and from the very beginning, he had strong lungs and a determined personality. Those first months of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful. Travis helped with nighttime feedings and diaper changes, utterly devoted to his wife and son. Beatrice was a natural mother, patient and loving even when Thomas was fussy or wakeful. They took turns walking him around the house when he would not settle, singing to him and telling him stories about the life they would build together. As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, the ranch prospered. Travis hired a young man named Jack Riley to help with the cattle and heavy work, giving him more time to spend with his family. Beatrice began teaching Thomas his letters and numbers, reading to him every night before bed. The little boy was bright and curious, always asking questions and getting into mischief. When Thomas was 3, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant again. This time Travis was prepared, though no less excited. The second pregnancy was easier than the first, and in the spring of 1884, they welcomed a daughter. Sarah Grace Thompson was born on a sunny April morning, with wispy blonde hair and her father's gray eyes. She was a peaceful, content baby, the opposite of her boisterous brother. Travis held his daughter and thought about that day 6 years ago when he had found Beatrice standing alone and rejected in the street. He thought about the family they had built together, this beautiful life they had created from tragedy and kindness and love. He looked at his wife, who was watching him with their daughter with such tenderness, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "What are you thinking about?" Beatrice asked softly. "About how lucky I am. About how that day I found you in town was the best day of my life, even though I did not know it yet." Beatrice reached for his hand. "You gave me everything when I had nothing. A home, a family, a reason to keep going. You saved my life, Travis." "No," he said quietly. "We saved each other. You made my house a home. You made me understand what love really means. You gave me a family and a future. Everything good in my life started the day you walked into it." They sat together, their children sleeping peacefully, the ranch house warm and full of love, and knew that they had built something that would last. The pain of the past would never completely disappear, but it had been transformed into something beautiful. From rejection and tragedy had come acceptance and joy. From loneliness had come the deepest love either of them had ever known. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Thomas grew into a serious, responsible boy who loved helping his father with the ranch work. Sarah was gentle and creative, always drawing or making up stories. In 1887, Beatrice gave birth to another son, whom they named Benjamin James Thompson. He was a happy, easygoing child who seemed to find joy in everything. The ranch expanded steadily. Travis bought more land, increased the herd, and built a larger barn. Beatrice kept the books and managed the household with calm efficiency, raising their children with love and discipline in equal measure. They were respected members of the community now, their early struggles forgotten or forgiven by most. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Travis took Beatrice back to the meadow where he had first told her he loved her. The children were spending the day with Martha Hayes, giving them rare time alone together. They rode up the familiar trail, the horses navigating the path with ease, and dismounted in the same spot where they had sat a decade before. The wildflowers were in bloom again, the stream still ran cold and clear, and the mountains still rose majestically against the brilliant blue sky. But everything was different now. They were different. No longer two wounded, lonely people finding comfort in each other, but a solid, united partnership forged through years of love and work and shared purpose. "You remember the first time we came here?" Travis asked, pulling Beatrice into his arms. "Of course. You told me you were falling in love with me. I was so scared and so hopeful at the same time." "Were you? Scared, I mean. Terrified," she admitted. "I had lost everyone I loved so violently. I was afraid to love anyone again, afraid it would be taken away, but you made me brave enough to try." Travis kissed her forehead. "I was scared too. I had been alone for so long I had forgotten what it felt like to need someone, to want to build a life with another person. You changed everything for me." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, then Beatrice pulled back to look up at him. "I never properly thanked you, you know, for what you did that day in town, for standing up for me when no one else would, for giving me a place in your family when I had none of my own. Beatrice, you do not need to thank me. Bringing you home was the best decision I ever made. You have given me far more than I ever gave you." Still, she insisted, I want you to know that I understand what you risked, how the town could have turned against you for taking in a stranger, how you did not know if I was telling the truth or if I could be trusted. You took a chance on me based on nothing but faith and kindness, and I will never forget that. Travis cupped her face in his hands, his gray eyes serious and full of love. I took a chance on you because I saw someone strong and brave who needed help. And you have spent every day since proving that my faith was justified. You are the best wife, the best mother, the best partner I could ever have asked for. I love you more today than I did 10 years ago, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. That is my promise to you. Beatrice kissed him deeply, pouring 10 years of love and gratitude and devotion into that kiss. They sank down onto the soft grass, holding each other close, and made love there in the meadow with the sun warm on their skin and the sound of the stream singing nearby. It was passionate and tender and familiar, the intimacy of two people who knew each other completely and loved everything they knew. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Beatrice's head on Travis's chest, his fingers playing idly with her hair. Tell me about the future, she said softly. What do you see for us? Travis was quiet for a moment, thinking. I see us growing old together on this ranch. I see our children growing up strong and happy and making their own way in the world. I see grandchildren running around the yard someday. I see us sitting on the porch in our rocking chairs, still holding hands, still in love after 50 years of marriage. That sounds perfect, Beatrice murmured. Though I hope we have many more years before the rocking chairs. Travis laughed. We do. We have so many more years ahead of us, and I intend to spend every single one loving you. They stayed in the meadow until the afternoon sun warned them it was time to head back. They rode home slowly, in no hurry, their hands linked between the horses just as they had been all those years ago. When they arrived back at the ranch, their children came running out to greet them, and Travis scooped Sarah and Benjamin up while Thomas walked alongside, already too dignified at 8 years old for such displays. That evening, after the children were in bed, Travis and Beatrice sat on the porch with Bear, now gray-muzzled and moving slowly but still devoted. They watched the stars come out one by one, the night air crisp and clean, and talked quietly about their day and their plans and their dreams. You know, Beatrice said thoughtfully, sometimes I think about that day in town, about how different my life could have been if you had not been there, if you had not cared enough to help a stranger. Travis squeezed her hand. But I was there, and I did care. Some things are just meant to be. Do you really believe that? That we were meant to find each other? I do, he said firmly. I believe you walked into my life exactly when you were supposed to. I believe we were meant to build this life together. I believe our children were meant to be born and our love was meant to grow. I believe in us, Beatrice. I always have. She leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. I believe in us too, in this family we have built, in the love that brought us together and keeps us strong. The years continued their steady march. The children grew and thrived. Thomas inherited his father's work ethic and love of the land, already talking about expanding the ranch when he was old enough. Sarah developed a talent for music and art, filling the house with piano melodies and sketches. Benjamin was the peacemaker, always smoothing over conflicts between his siblings with humor and charm. In 1892, when Thomas was 15, he asked his father why the town had been so hostile to his mother when she first arrived. Travis and Beatrice had discussed this day, knowing their children would eventually ask questions. They sat all 3 children down and told them the truth about what had happened to Beatrice's family, about the rejection she had faced, about how their father had offered her a place in his family when no one else would help. The children listened with wide eyes, Sarah crying openly and Thomas looking furious at the injustice of it all. When the story was finished, Thomas looked at his parents with new respect and understanding. "You were brave, Mama, and you were a good man, Papa, for helping her." "Your father is the best man I have ever known," Beatrice said quietly. "He taught me that there is still kindness in the world, even after terrible things happen. He gave me hope when I had none. He gave me all of you." Sarah hugged her mother tightly. "I am glad Papa found you. I am glad you are our Mama." Benjamin, at 8 years old and already wise beyond his years, looked at both his parents seriously. "We should always help people who need it, right? Like Papa helped you." "Yes," Travis said firmly. "That is exactly right. We always help those in need, no matter what other people think or say." It was a lesson their children never forgot, and one they would pass down to their own children in time. As the century drew to a close, Travis and Beatrice watched the world change around them. New technologies arrived, towns grew larger, the wild frontier gradually became more civilized. But their love remained constant, a steady anchor in a changing world. On their 20th anniversary in 1898, they renewed their vows in the same church where they had married. Their children stood with them, now young adults and a teenager, all of them tearful and proud. The church was packed with friends and neighbors, the same community that had once rejected Beatrice, now celebrating her enduring marriage with genuine warmth. After the ceremony, as they walked out into the sunshine, Beatrice squeezed Travis's hand and smiled up at him. 20 years. Can you believe it? Best 20 years of my life," he said, kissing her gently. "Here is to 20 more and then 20 more after that." "Forever," she agreed. "I choose you forever." Thomas announced his engagement that year to a sweet girl named Lucy Carter, and they were married in the spring of 1899. Travis and Beatrice helped them build a small house on the ranch property, expanding the family holdings and keeping everyone close. Sarah left for Denver to study music, though she came home often and always brought new songs to share. Benjamin, now in his teens, showed promise as a rancher and businessman both. In 1900, Beatrice became a grandmother when Thomas and Lucy welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Beatrice Martha after both her grandmothers. Beatrice held her tiny namesake and cried happy tears, marveling at the circle of life and love. Travis stood behind his wife, his arms wrapped around her, and together they looked down at this new generation they had helped create. "You gave me this," Beatrice whispered to her husband. "This family, these blessings, all of it stems from your kindness that day in town." "No," Travis said softly. "We gave this to each other. Everything we have built, we built together." The new century brought continued prosperity and happiness. More grandchildren arrived, filling the ranch with noise and laughter. Sarah eventually returned home from Denver with a husband, a kind music teacher named Robert, and they settled in Black Hawk, where Sarah taught piano to local children. Benjamin married a rancher's daughter and proved to be an astute businessman, helping Travis modernize and expand their operations. Through it all, Travis and Beatrice remained deeply in love. They still took rides up to their meadow on special occasions. They still sat on the porch every evening, holding hands and talking about their day. They still kissed each other goodbye every morning and hello every evening. They still looked at each other across a crowded room and smiled, sharing private jokes and memories. People in town marveled at their marriage, holding them up as an example of true partnership and enduring love. Young couples came to them for advice. The Reverend mentioned them in sermons about faith and redemption. But Travis and Beatrice remained humble, never forgetting where they had started or how easily things could have gone differently. In the spring of 1910, Travis and Beatrice sat on their porch watching their grandchildren play in the yard. Travis was 59 now, his dark hair liberally streaked with silver, his face lined from years of sun and wind and laughter. Beatrice was 54, her auburn hair faded to a softer shade but her green eyes still as bright and lively as ever. They had been married 32 years, had raised 3 children, welcomed 5 grandchildren, and built a thriving ranch and a legacy of love. "Are you happy?" Travis asked, as he had asked so many times over the years. Beatrice looked at him, at this man who had changed her life with a simple act of kindness, and smiled. "Happy does not even begin to cover it. I am blessed beyond measure. I have a husband I love more every day, children and grandchildren who fill my life with joy, a home I adore, and a community that accepts me. I have everything I never dared to dream of when I arrived here all those years ago." Travis pulled her close, kissing her temple. "I love you, Beatrice Thompson. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, and you are mine," she replied softly. "My hero, my husband, my everything. Thank you for seeing past the blood and tears to the person underneath. Thank you for giving me your name and your home and your heart. Thank you for building this beautiful life with me." "Thank you for saying yes," Travis answered, "for taking a chance on a lonely cowboy who offered you a place in his family, for loving me and staying with me and making me happier than I ever thought possible." They sat together as the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, surrounded by the sounds of family and home and love. 2 people who had found each other when they needed each other most, who had chosen each other every day since, who had built something beautiful and lasting from tragedy and kindness. That night, as they lay in bed together, Beatrice traced the familiar lines of Travis's face. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day, when I told you I had nothing? I said, 'Then you will be part of mine,'" Travis recalled, his voice warm with the memory. "You gave me everything," Beatrice whispered. "A family, a home, a future, a love I never expected to find. You kept that promise every single day, and I always will," Travis promised, pulling her close. "Until my very last breath, you are part of mine and I am part of yours. We are a family. Forever." They fell asleep in each other's arms as they had for 32 years, 2 hearts beating as one. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead and the mountains stood eternal, and the ranch house held within it the greatest treasure of all, a love that had survived rejection and tragedy to flourish into something extraordinary. A love that would continue through their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, a legacy of kindness and courage and choosing each other, always. The cowboy had seen her rejected by every family in town, and he had said then, "You will be part of mine." And in doing so, he had given her the world.